Alright, okay, good evening everyone. We'll get started for today's session over here. Okay, so quick one, of course, disclaimer, right? Everything that we'll be sharing in today's session solely based on educational purposes. And of course, they do not directly translate to any form of trade signals or investment advisory, okay? So, yep, with that said, let's jump into the sessions and then talk about some of the analysis and the outlook for the week, okay? So this week over here, what are some of the events that you want to take note of? First thing first, on Wednesday, we have the US CPI, so definitely that's going to be important. Okay, essentially inflation related data like CPI is still going to be crucial, okay? Then after the CPI on Thursday midnight, we do have the FOMC rate statement. So over here you can see the market consensus is that unlikely the Fed is going to move. We're going to maintain rates at 5.5. I think generally that's going to be the case. Right now the expectation is that we may only get maybe one cut by the end of this year itself. Of course, that also depends on the latest CPI data that's going to be released, whether the Fed may consider maybe cutting it a little bit early. Okay, so that's on the US side, and then of course on Thursday itself, we also have the Aussie labor market data. Okay, so that's going to be having some volatility depending on whether you are interested in catching the Aussie news trade. That can be something to note. And then on Thursday, 8:30 evening, we have the US PPI. That one itself, I don't think that's going to be like super important. Okay, and to end off the week here, we have the Bank of Japan coming in on Friday. Okay, so this week itself, I think right, so this week here itself, I think overall pretty eventful, especially on the dollar side of things. The US CPI data is definitely news tradable. So if you are familiar with the news trading strategy that we adopt over here, okay, this Wednesday itself can be something you look out for. Okay, so that's the events itself. Okay, let's take a look at the overall charts and where are some of the opportunities, what's the outlook for this week. Okay, so let's start off with the dollar index. So last Friday, NFP actually sent the dollar stronger. But I'm gonna be still overall a little bit more on the bearish perspective of things. So over here you can read a little bit, right? While price made an impulsive move to the upside, I'm actually still looking at potentially a bearish move to complete the bigger cycle of a 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm not too convinced that this is the tree leg itself. I might be wrong, okay, of course, depending on how the price is going to react off the 50 and 618 as of now. If we get a corrective move here, then of course that opens up to a potential short-term move back up. Okay, maybe that's the target to retest previous high if we can get a corrective structure. If we don't get a corrective structure and we kind of see some kind of a rejection of this zone, okay, then we'll start to expect more downside to complete the bigger cycle of this. Okay, so that's my take, right? Right now I'm still holding on to slanting towards the bearish side of things, but obviously it doesn't mean that you're just gonna sell the dollar now, right? Okay, so that's the outlook. Because the reason here, if I zoom out a little bit, okay, this move is pretty huge, right? So I would say this pullback here on the bigger scheme of things look a bit more balanced, right? And that's the reason why we're still expecting one more pushback to the downside. Okay, so that's my take on the dollar index. If I kind of put that into the euro, okay, of course NFP did send it coming down. I'm also looking at potentially the bounce, right? Now you don't want to buy now, right? Because it's impulsive, but look at things here. This can be a simple AB, okay, and maybe internally a 5 wave here to complete wave C. This may still end up as an expanding flat, and then this can go higher. Okay, so I'm just a little bit cautious in selling in this perspective, right? So we have this as a move up. This can be the pullback for one more leg up. Okay, so again, things may change depending on how the market continue to develop from here on. But we are currently testing the 50 and 618. We'll see how things develop. Okay, as I mentioned over here, right, if you can get a bullish bounce, then any corrective pullback will start to look for upside. Okay, so that's the thing, right? We may need to give the market some time, or even maybe after the Wednesday CPI, to really have a more concrete bias in terms of focusing on whether to buy or sell. Okay, so that's on the euro side of things. The pound dollar here are pretty straightforward. Pound dollar here we're bearish. Essentially, I'm looking at this as a crawl, right? We did get a little bit of an impulsive from NFP as well to the downside. So if we can get a pullback here, then we'll be expecting at least one more push. If not, then further down towards this areas. Okay. So GBP USD I think is pretty clear cut. If I kind of compare this to maybe the euro dollar, this pair directional buys here, I'm a little bit more confident in it. Okay, yeah, so I'm a little bit more convicted, I would say, in terms of the bearishness on the pound dollar side of things. Okay. Aussie dollar, we're currently testing the key areas here, right? We have the channel structure, we have a tree wave, we have the fit 100%. If you kind of look back a little bit, we are also testing the previous resistance, now turn potentially support zone. Okay, so I'm a little bit on the neutral side of things. If moving forward we can get a nice decent crawl here, obviously that would stack up the odds and the probability, and we'll start to look for maybe a buy trade to the upside, right? A breakout entry to take this trade to the upside. Okay, so again, if I kind of zoom out a little bit, right, the overall view on Aussie here is also very straightforward. Impulse, and this is a decent tree wave. Okay, seem pretty balanced as of now, and that's where we can start to look for upside if we get the first clue, the first sign that the market is indeed bouncing off around the zone at 6580. Okay, so that's not Aussie. Dollar Canadian, right? I'm gonna hold on to a neutral bias here, right? The reason of that is because there are two ways in which we can really look into this, right? One is that this is a set of three, okay, and then this is a set of three. And if that's the view, then of course we're expecting another set of three to complete the bigger structure, right? The reason is because while this inner move is impulsive, this entire leg doesn't look impulsive at all, right? So that opens up the perspective where this can be a corrective structure of this leg, and therefore we can still expect one more drop. Okay, so the past, I would say 1 to 2 months, the major pairs has been kind of like really difficult to maneuver because of the huge consolidation phase the dollar pairs are really looking into. Dollar CAD I think is a classic example, right? We have been moving within the range since mid-April, right? From this high to this low, the market has been like really bouncing up and down for the last 1.5 months ish. So be a little bit patient, I would say, for now. Okay, especially this one here, right? It's not a sell, it's not a buy at the moment, but it's basically at a key area that, depending how price is going to develop going forward, will start to give us a little bit more hint whether we want to focus on the sell side of things or the buy side of things. Okay, yeah, so that's my take, right? This one here probably need to just be patient and give it some time. The dollar yen here, I'm actually bearish. Potentially we may have also completed this inner cycle of a three-way structure. Okay, but of course, if you're more conservative, my take is just wait for another impulsive drop, then you take the sell, right? You want to wait for some kind of confirmation. The thing here is, of course, if you are trading here, I mean, risk to reward ratio makes sense as well if you are into that. Simply because the invalidation is quite clear cut, right? This would naturally be your invalidation. Okay, so if you kind of take the trade at market right now, no matter where you're gonna target, I think that risk reward ratio is naturally gonna make sense, right? It's gonna be worthwhile. Even if you target this low here, you can see risk reward is there. Okay, but of course you need to be very clear in terms of like the criteria for your execution, right? Or I would say your strategy itself. You need to be disciplined. Okay, if I want to, there is that setup, potentially we can look into as well. If I can put in a 3-leg structure, right, you can see the market is essentially testing it right now. Okay, so as I mentioned, right, if this is something that you are okay, you're comfortable with it, the risk reward ratio makes a lot of sense. Okay, let me just put this in again, right? The risk reward ratio make a lot of sense, right? Yeah, I mean, you can even decide to put your stop loss at the 161 extension, but I think that's really not necessary, right? Because to me, if the market breaks this high, you probably don't want to be selling it anymore, right? Because then that would turn into a bigger structure that maybe this is just a pullback and then we'll look for more upside, right? So I would say the stop loss itself, you probably don't need to put it all the way until 618. Okay, you probably just have this previous swing high as potential stop. So that kind of makes sense. All right. Yeah, on the lower time frame, you can even potentially consider like some kind of a breakout structure here. Okay, with the stop a little bit tighter, but of course this is a bit more risky, right? So yeah, I personally seldom execute trade on Monday. Okay, so I'll probably just let this, see how it develops for today, and then we'll come back tomorrow morning and see how things develop, right? Then I'll probably decide whether to take a trade, how to take a trade, maybe tomorrow. Okay, but dollar yen here looks pretty interesting for the downside. Okay, then we have gold. Okay, gold here I can't miss the entry on this, right? Because on NFP, I don't really like to jump in prior to NFP unless we are doing news trade. Okay, so news trade last Friday, I did trade on the Canadian side of things. Pretty straightforward, pretty nice. If you trade on an NFP using a strategy, you probably also catch some nice decent profits. So gold here, okay, came in as expected, as what we have, anticipate how the price would likely develop. This was the kind of expanding flat structure, so impulse, correction, impulse, right? Now for me right now, I'm not too keen to sell it. Okay, based on where we are, I think this would likely complete that cycle, and then we'll start to look for upside, right? And of course, we can even potentially see it from the angle where this is a big expanding flat, right? So I'm starting to tilt towards focusing on bullishness, okay? But of course, I would like to see some kind of like smaller time frame, smaller structure confluences to tell me that, yeah, the market would likely tend to reverse soon, okay? So that's the take on gold. Okay, I know many people are interested in gold, but I think right now you just want to be a little bit more patient on things. Okay, then we have crude oil. Okay, crude oil over here, I would say I'm going to be neutral. Okay, but of course from a macro perspective, right, you may want to consider looking at potentially more on the bullish side of things for commodities in general, right? So that's not really a short-term thing, right? It may take some time for it to develop. This may actually call into a consolidation that looks something like that. Okay, so this consolidation here in typical instrument will probably look at sell side, right? So this kind of like impulse correction, impulse, right? But because this is a commodity, okay, and when we are trading commodities, our underlying understanding of the direction needs to be altered a little bit, needs to be, kind of understand that there's a baseline in commodities, especially commodities with production value, commodities with, industrial utility value. Okay, so crude oil naturally falls into that, right? So if price drops below a certain level, it doesn't make sense for the suppliers to continue producing oil, and then that will cut supply short, and then it will push prices back up. Okay, so that's a very, very natural kind of like price, market, right? So I'm overall bullish bias on crude oil. Okay, that's what I want to share with you. So right now, in terms of charts here, right, if we get a Okay, if we get some kind of a continuation or confirmation of impulse V-shape followed by correction here, I may consider to start looking for buy trade opportunity, even though this is not like the ideal structure, right? Because this can't give you a 1 2 3 4 5. It's not entirely a complete cycle, okay, which also opens up the possibility that this can do, you know, a pullback, this can go back up, and this can still be over a correction and one more drop, okay, to complete the 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 cycle before the move out, right? Yeah, so I'm gonna be cautious even by buying, but I'm not too keen to sell it based on what we're seeing at the moment. Okay, so this is my take on crude oil. Moving forward. Okay, then next, we have the S&P 500, right? So S&P 500 over here, it's still bullish. I think this chart or this particular asset has been following the wave structure pretty nicely. Okay, especially since we have projected this wave 3, we have projected this wave 4, and then right now we are projecting the wave 5 seems to be, you know, following very, very nicely. Okay, so short term we're still bullish, but you want to be very careful if the market hits this area around 5,400-ish zone, right? Because then that will complete a 5-way cycle, and then we can potentially expect maybe some kind of a deeper pullback. Okay. But of course, we also want to bear in mind that wave 5 can be extended, right? So you can actually go a little bit higher. So you want to definitely, if you have any buy, right, you probably want to like take partial profits, kind of monitor around the area at 5,400s, right? So that's the area you want to keep an eye on. Okay. The yen pairs here on pound yen and Aussie yen, I would overall be patient right now. Okay, I don't see a very nice and clear structure at the moment to be trading this too. Okay. Then for pound Australia here I'm bullish. Okay, if I was kind of zoom out, I'm actually expecting this to really, you know, start breaking out and then testing all the way back at the previous high, right? That's my take. But then again, we need to see some kind of confirmation of a break of this black trend line. Okay, so we are bullish, but ideally we want to see that nice momentum break, right? So if we can get a corrective pullback here, we'll likely still look to buy. However, if this entire leg starts to go correctively, we want to be very, very careful that this can U-turn back. Okay, and that can just be a simple complete cycle that looks like that. So short-term upside, okay, if market can really take out the trend line with momentum, then will be long-term upside. Okay, yep, so that's my take on the pound odd. Euro Canadian here, not the clearest of all as well. Okay, I did have this trend line as a visual guidance. Very, very corrective. Overall, we get this impulse. If we can get a correction here, I would say we can look for downside. Okay, so just give it some time, right? Give it a little bit more time and see how things go. Alright, right now nothing there. Then we have BTC. Okay, so BTC here, probably we may come down a little bit more. Okay, this pattern structure can be a running flat, can be an expanding flat. We'll never know. Okay, right now we do have a little bit of a potential hidden divergence that can develop, right? I mean, if the price comes down a little bit more, this would probably break that, and then you have like RSI giving you a lower low, but you know, price is giving you a high low. This is what we call a hidden divergence, right? Hidden divergence often is a trend, continuation, confirmation, and oftentimes that would be what we call a running flat. Okay, 1 2 3, running flat, and then continuation. Yeah, so direction wise, I think for Bitcoin is quite clear. I'm not so keen in selling it, I'm more interested in buying it. You probably just want to look out for buy opportunities, and then you can capitalize on that. Okay, so that's yeah, that's my take on Bitcoin. All right, so that's the overall view in terms of the market here itself. Okay. Yeah, so I see some of you typing in, right? Ahmad here asked to check MYROUSDT. That's definitely crypto side of things, right? Okay, probably I'll just share with you, like, you know, shorter term, more recent development. I think this structure here is quite clear, right? So the market is kind of testing the key area, right? The confluence area here as well. Yeah, I would say you probably don't want to be selling at where we are. You can definitely start to see if you can get a potential buy trade, okay, around the zone, because the market has completed a three-wave cycle itself, right? So this oftentimes would mean upside, right? Yeah, so this is on the H4 chart, right? So that's something you can take note of. Another one here you're asking is this one, right? Um, okay, nothing much on the left. Probably only what I can really say is this looks three wave. Okay, but take note. Would I be participating in such coins? I won't, right? But of course, in terms of like chart analysis, I would say you probably can look out for upside as well, right? Maybe you want to wait for this to pull back, give you some kind of mini double bottom formation. Then you can trade a breakout as a form of confirmation, right? So that's something you can look into. Okay, so that's the two coins. New Zealand dollar. Okay, New Zealand dollar is very very similar to pound, right? So in terms of price pattern, we see this kind of structure here. So naturally we get a first impulsive drop, right? We often expect market to develop in sets of three. Okay, so I would say if we can get a corrective pullback, we can probably expect one more drop. Perhaps towards like this zone here, right? So if you pull Fed, that would give you somewhere around that 50% mark. Okay. Yeah, so my take on the Kiwi dollar, probably something like that. You can keep an eye on. Okay, wait for the corrective pullback, then trade one more move down. Pretty nice confluence around this zone here as well. So that's your target. Okay, Sonadro says I have a sell order on UJ at 156.9. What's my idea? I think just like I mentioned, right? I mean, if you have a sell trade on UJ, it's perfectly fine. I think the risk reward ratio kind of makes a lot of sense, right? So you probably can just, I'm pretty sure there's a good chance your stop loss will probably be just above that swing high anyway. So that I think that trade itself makes sense, right? If you're looking at the pound yen, I'm a little bit hesitant on this, right? I think if you want to choose one to focus, maybe the dollar yen makes sense to be holding on to that risk, simply because of the risk to reward ratio, right? But if you're looking at pound yen here, probably not too keen in holding that that trade or with the risk in this trade here, because this can play out something like that and then maybe one more push, and then only after that maybe there's a lot of possibility within this, right? What I'm seeing here is there's a good chance the market would continue to develop in a bigger corrective structure, and it's just not going to be easy kind of dealing with that. Okay. Yeah, so my take is among these two yen, um the dollar yen will be better. Okay, good. um yeah, so in general those are the things I have for this week here. Okay, hope that's clear. Very very quick one. If you guys are still not aware, okay, just to very very quickly share with you some of the services that you can actually try out. With a 7-day trial. Okay, for those of you who are not aware of the Trading Dose Premium Analysis, you can just head over to my website, right, karyong.com. You'll be landed on this page here. You can click on the first link to get your free trial. It's basically a daily market analysis report that's sent out. Okay, you can try it for 7 days and see if that's something that might be able to value add to your trading. If you want, and it is able to help you, then you can continue on that service itself. You can also join our Discord server, right? Inside there are some insights as well for you to some information that you can find out about PAM, about copy trade. This where you can find a bit more information about that, and of course this one you guys are here already, so you know about it. Okay. Yeah, so this is the link, karyong.com. If you want to get your free trial, join the Discord to understand a little bit about the PAM, as well as the copy trade service, right? You can do that. Okay, and of course my YouTube channel is this. Okay, yeah, so before we end off, I think Chia here asked quickly for the index, right? So we'll take a look at them. I think the S&P and the NASDAQ, they're pretty much quite similar, right? So we're looking at basically this entire leg here. So upside as well, right? NASDAQ is a little bit different, right? Sorry, this is Dow Jones, US 30. Okay. So US 30 did form a little bit of a topish formation, and we did see that rejection from there on. My take on this here, you probably do not want to be buying it too aggressively, right? Okay, if you're trading the Dow Jones, I think there's a good possibility we'll see a little bit more downside here. Okay, I mean, right now the market seems to be bouncing the top, right? And then, of course, a pretty nice little rejection. This can develop into something like that and one more drop, right? So among the US index, you probably want to focus a bit more on like S&P and NASDAQ. I think those are the clearer structure. Okay. German DAX overall still upside, but of course with this recent development here, we need to update a little bit in the FIP counts, right? Okay, I think overall still upside, but probably we're gonna see a bit of a deeper pullback first, right? So maybe short term you can look for sell. Yeah, 50 and 100, pretty nice little confluence there. Okay, let me maybe put in a little bit more analysis so they can understand what I'm looking at. We have a completed tree wave, but I would say on the bigger scheme of things, right? That's something that we can look out for, right? So 1, 2, 3, a reset of X wave here, then this can develop into something like that. Okay. So short term, if you can get a pullback, you may want to see if you can take the sell, and then around the zone you start to look for buy again. Okay, so German DAX, that's gonna be my take, right? Okay, so short term, something like that. Okay, so that's on German DAX. FTSE over here, I think overall it's probably going to still develop into something like this. Right, so I think you want to focus on potential buy side right now. Okay, but just be cautious because this tree leg here can still come back down for a bigger consolidation before the push it up, right? But short term, okay, to clean things up a little bit, short term you can expect this potential trade here, right? Yeah, that will be something you can look up for in the near term, right? This is on FTSE. Okay. China A50 currently testing the 50% mark. My take is just wait for something to bounce here first. Okay. If you can get a V shape, or if you can get a crawl, then yeah, that will be upside on the A50. Okay. So if I extend that, that will be the zone. Okay, yeah, so A50 is this view. If you can get a crawl or some kind of like a nice decent impulsive move, then start to look for upside. I'm saying probably not the clearest, but this is definitely impulsive. If you get a correction, this will probably come down a little bit more, right? So yeah, nothing much on Hang Seng based on what we have right now. Okay, Aussie 200, we didn't really get the tree wave. The market continued to move higher. Not the clearest. Again, I will avoid this, right? There are better ones if you're trading the index, right? Like this is a little bit clearer to monitor. German DAX definitely. Okay, FTSE definitely. Aussie here, probably just want to avoid that, right? This is not a clear structure because why? This is a V shape. Okay. Switzerland side of things, we may have completed the 5th wave here, right? Okay, because it has hit that area of target. So if that's going to be a 5th wave completion, okay, then you would expect a deeper pullback that looks something like that. Good. Okay, so yeah, if you are interested in that, you can trade a pullback. Okay, so those are some of the views on the index itself. Aussie CAD, very much in a consolidation right now. I wouldn't want to focus too much on the pair that looks something like that. Okay, I mean, you're basically in a consolidation, right? We haven't really get a break of this lower part here as well. Okay, so overall, I think just stay out of this. Okay, Ethereum, pretty much similar to Bitcoin. I think overall we are looking at it from an angle of a corrective structure. Okay, so I think overall you can start to look for buy. Pretty much similar to Bitcoin. Okay, we are basically doing a corrective structure, potentially upside. Good. Yeah, so yep. Generally that's about it from my side for this week's analysis and overview. Okay, hope that give you guys some insights. And as always, all the best to your trading, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Okay, see you guys. Bye bye.